This video is a tutorial on the disassembly and assembly procedures for the HT6 Hysteresis capping headset from Closure Systems International. When watching this video, it is recommended that you have the CSI HT6 Headset Operating Instruction Manual available. The manual provides additional detailed information required to correctly complete an HT6 headset rebuild. This video covers only the headset disassembly and assembly procedures. Cleaning and inspection of the individual headset components is also required and is covered in detail in the HT6 headset manual. The first step in the disassembly of the CSI HT6 Hysteresis headset is to loosen the top-load collar locking screw. Then remove the two locking screws from the top-load hub. Completely unscrew the top-load collar to remove it and the top-load spring from the headset. Securely clamp the HT6 headset assembly fixture in a vise. Invert the headset into the fixture and use the 80 to 90 mm spanner wrench on the upper housing to loosen the top-load hub from the headset. Completely unscrew the top-load hub to remove it. The upper housing can now be placed into the HT6 headset assembly fixture so it engages the pins. Use the 80 to 90 mm spanner wrench on the torque assembly to separate the torque assembly from the drive assembly. Push the mounting hub through the upper housing to separate it from the drive assembly. Then remove the 4 drive pins from the mounting hub. The quad ring seal and O-ring seal can be removed from the upper housing. Also remove the O-ring seal from the top of the mounting hub. This completes the disassembly of the HT6 Hysteresis headset drive assembly. To disassemble the HT6 Hysteresis headset torque assembly, securely clamp the HT6 fixture in a vise. Orient the square hole in the torque assembly quill with the square shaft on the fixture and place the torque assembly onto the fixture. Use the quill socket to loosen the upper quill. Partially unscrew the upper quill several turns. Lightly strike the upper quill with a plastic hammer to drive the quill from the bearing bore. You can now remove the quill, bearing, bearing spacer, and upper quill from the torque assembly. Use a 2.5mm hex key to loosen the locking screw in the lower magnet assembly. Now screw the gauge, shaft, and nut assembly fully into the lower housing. Slowly turn the gauge shaft to push the driven disc and lower magnet assembly out of the lower housing. Use care when handling the driven disc, as the material is very brittle and the disc can break if dropped or allowed to snap against the headset magnet assemblies. Carefully slide the driven disc off the magnet assembly to separate the two. Keep them well separated until you are ready to reassemble the torque assembly. The magnet assemblies should not be disassembled except by qualified CSI personnel. This completes the disassembly of the CSI HT6 Hysteresis Headset. In addition to the tools used in the headset disassembly, you will need 3 different lubricants to reassemble the CSI HT6 Hysteresis Headset: Lubriplate FGL2 food grade grease, Dow Corning 111 silicone grease, and Never-Seize food grade anti-seize compound. Carefully slide the driven disc onto the lower magnet assembly. Make sure the disc is precisely centered on the lower magnet assembly. Screw the gauge nut into the top of the upper magnet assembly. And screw the gauge shaft completely into the gauge nut. Apply Dow Corning 111 silicone grease to the outside face of the lower magnet assembly. Carefully place the driven disc with the lower magnet assembly on the end of the gauge shaft. Slowly unscrew the gauge shaft, lowering the driven disc and the lower magnet assembly into the upper magnet assembly. As the two assemblies come together, align the locking screw in the lower magnet assembly with the slot in the upper magnet assembly. When the lower magnet assembly is fully inserted in the upper magnet assembly, remove the gauge nut and shaft. Apply FGL2 grease to the outside of the quill. Apply food-grade anti-seize compound to the inside threads of the quill. Insert the quill through the bottom of the torque assembly. Slide the bearing spacer over the quill. Apply FGL2 grease to the ID of the headset bearing and insert the upper quill into the bearing. Then slide the bearing over the quill and begin screwing the upper quill and lower quill together. Use the 2.5mm hex key to tighten the locking screw on the lower magnet assembly. Securely clamp the HT6 fixture in the vise. Orient the square hole in the torque assembly quill with the square shaft on the fixture and place the torque assembly onto the fixture. Use the quill socket and a torque wrench to tighten the upper quill to 30 foot-pounds. This completes the reassembly of the CSI HT6 Hysteresis Headset torque assembly. Please note that the headset quill will not be free to rotate at this point in the assembly process. Do not attempt to rotate the headset quill. To reassemble the HT6 headset drive assembly, start by applying a light coat of Lubriplate FGL2 grease to the largest diameter, threads, and pin pockets of the mounting hub. Insert the 4 new drive pins into the pockets, making sure they are also fully coated with the FGL2 grease. Use the FGL2 grease to coat the minor diameter and pin grooves inside the upper housing. Install the new quad ring seal into the upper housing. Check to be sure that it is properly seated and that the inner bore is completely coated with the FGL2 grease. Carefully slide the mounting hub into the upper housing. Coat the O-rings with Dow Corning 111 silicone grease before installing them on the mounting hub and on the upper housing. This completes the reassembly of the HT6 Hysteresis Headset drive assembly. Securely clamp the HT6 headset assembly fixture in a vise. Place the drive assembly into the assembly fixture so it engages the pins. Be sure the bearing seat is coated with FGL2 grease. Carefully drop the torque assembly onto the drive assembly and thread the two assemblies together. Tighten securely using the 80 to 90 mm spanner wrench. Now place the top-load hub into the HT6 headset assembly fixture. Apply food-grade anti-seize compound to the threads of the mounting hub and ensure the small O-ring coated with Dow Corning 111 grease is in place on the mounting hub. Screw the headset onto the top-load hub and tighten snug with the 80 to 90 mm spanner wrench. Do not over-tighten. Securely clamp the HT6 fixture in a vise. Orient the square hole in the torque assembly quill with the square shaft on the fixture and place the headset onto the fixture. Apply food-grade anti-seize compound to the outside threads on the top-load hub. Place the top-load spring on the headset and screw the top-load collar onto the top-load hub. Apply food-grade anti-seize compound to the locking screws before installing them in the top-load hub. Tighten the locking screws to secure the top-load hub to the headset. These screws also prevent the top-load collar from backing off in the unlikely event it loosens during operation. There should also be food-grade anti-seize compound on the threads of the top-load collar locking screw. Adjust the torque by loosening the locking screw in the lower magnet assembly. Rotate the lower magnet assembly relative to the upper magnet assembly as shown. Tighten the locking screw to secure the lower magnet assembly. Before installing a chuck in the headset, be sure the threads in the quill are coated with food-grade anti-seize compound. This completes the reassembly of the CSI HT6 Hysteresis Headset.